Hi everybody, I'm Sue Ellen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we'll be learning the tarot deck one card at a time. Today we are talking about something that I feel is very important, and that is how to choose a tarot deck. Today we'll be discussing 8 things to consider when choosing a tarot deck, examples of some of the best and worst decks for beginners, in my opinion, and some of the lessons I learned when I was a beginner. And I just want to say that these are my opinions. You may love a deck that I find difficult, and that is not even okay. That's wonderful. So the first of the 8 things is to make sure it's a tarot deck and not an oracle deck. It is an easy mistake to make if you're a beginner. And actually, I went looking through my box of tarot cards, and it turned out I had about 20 oracle decks and only 2 tarot decks. So, yeah, lesson learned. I'm going to be using the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot deck as my example, plus many others. Rider-Waite-Smith tarot decks follow what you consider the standard format in terms of naming and numbering. They are also the most widely used. Tarot decks all have 78 cards. They have 22 major arcana cards that cover the major life lessons. You can see the image here. They go from the Fool, which is card number 0, to the World, which is card number 21. This is also known as the Fool's Journey because he learns lessons as he travels through each card from the beginning to the end of the deck. Tarot decks also have 4 suits, which are Wands, Swords, Cups, and Pentacles. Each suit has 14 cards, ace through 10s, plus 4 court cards, which are called the Page, Knight, Queen, and King. I'm going to show you an image of each of the 4 suits. I have a whole video called Introduction to the Tarot that covers it in much more detail, and you can find the link below if you are interested. Here's an image of the Wands suit. I'm only going to leave these up for a few seconds, so please pause if you'd like a longer look. Here is an image of the Swords suit. Here's the image of the Cups suit. And here's the image of the Pentacles suit. Oracle decks can have any description and any number of cards, usually somewhere between 36 and 64. They are much more intuitive to learn. Basically, you just pick a card and read the meaning, and they're usually pretty clear and very intuitive. Here's an example of an oracle card, and this is the Daily Guidance from Your Angels Oracle deck by Doreen Virtue. This card is called Let Your Past Go. It says, "The burden of carting your past around has made you weary, dear one. Keep only the lessons and the love, and leave everything else behind. You don't want it or need it, and now it is gone." So it's quite lovely and self-explanatory. It's something great to pull if you just need a boost or a quick answer. Here's an example from the Keepers of the Light Oracle cards by Kyle Gray. This card is Mercury and about open communication. The message is, get a weight off your chest, speak up with love, and be heard. This final example is from the Power of Surrender cards by Judith Orloff, MD. It says, surrender to play. Take a break from overthinking a goal. Do something fun. Play is a time of recreation and rejuvenation. So keep in mind that tarot decks have a specific format with 78 cards divided into a major and minor arcana with 4 suits. Oracle cards really have no rules. They tend to be a little bit smaller, but they don't need to be. So the second step is to choose a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So I highly recommend that you choose a Rider-Waite-Smith based deck. This was first published in 1909 by the Rider Company. It is based on instructions by A.E. Waite and illustrated by Pamela Colman Smith. So it's also known as the Rider deck, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, or the Smith-Coleman deck. So let's take a step back and compare learning to read a tarot deck to learning to play a musical instrument. I play the piano and spent a lot of time learning scales, theory, and how to play the classics. I never liked that, not for 1 minute, because I wanted to play popular music and my teachers hated this. They wanted me to learn the basics first so I could play anything. I feel like that's why we choose a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. It's the basics. It's also what most teachers use and has the most resources available in terms of books, classes, YouTube videos, and however you like to learn. It's not the most fun deck, but it definitely has its place as you are learning. Learning tarot can be really challenging. Right off the bat, there are 78 cards. If you read upright cards and upside down cards, which we call reversals, that's 156 card meanings to remember, and there can be dozens of meanings for each card. It's daunting enough to learn this without having the educational material you're using not match up with the name of the deck you're using. It would be like trying to understand a Shakespearean play that was written in Spanish. It's tough enough to understand Elizabethan English, at least for me, and then trying to translate it from another language along the way just makes it feel insurmountable. So here are some other names for the suits, and these are just the most common ones. Cups are also known as chalices, goblets, and vessels. Pentacles can be known as coins, discs, and rings. Wands can be known as batons, clubs, and staves. And swords can be known as daggers, blades, and knives. And some tarot cards rename the suits, such as in the Halloween Tarot by Kipling West, where we have the Ace of Pumpkins, the Seven of Ghosts, the Four of Bats, and the Page of Imps. The Rider-Waite-Smith deck calls the court cards the King, Queen, Knight, and Page. Other decks refer to the King as the Mentor, Healer, or Architect. They refer to the Queen as the Artist, Mother, or Visionary. They refer to the Knight as the Apprentice, Warrior, or Traveler. And they refer to the Page as Seekers, the Daughter, or the Student. When most of the reference books refer to the Queen of Cups, and your deck says the Artist of Chalices, it just adds another level of confusion to an already tough learning process. Some decks also rename some of the major arcana cards. In the Druid Craft Tarot deck created by Philip and Stephanie Carr-Gome, number 3, the Empress, is called the Lady. Number 4, the Emperor, is called the Lord. Number 15, the Devil, is called Cyrano, which means Horn One in the Celtic tradition. And number 20, Judgment, is called Rebirth. And then we get tarot decks that rename things entirely. So here are some examples. In the Cozy Witch Tarot deck by Amanda Lovelace, we see number 12 as the Patient Witch, number 13 as the Broom, and number 15 as the Toxic Witches. If you decide you want to use a non-Rider-Waite-Smith deck, don't dismay. What I do is buy the most inexpensive version of a Rider-Waite-Smith deck that you can find, and then put it alongside the deck you've chosen to use and translate when you need to. The third thing I recommend is to choose images that you can relate to. The problem with the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is that it is more than 110 years old. A lot of these images really aren't very appealing in the present day. Here are 3 examples. The Chariot, which is number 7, the 9 of Cups, and the 8 of Pentacles. There are many decks that have added colors and made the images a bit richer. I use the Radiant Tarot deck. You can see the differences between the deck I use and the original deck. So here's the original Chariot compared to the Radiant Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Here's the original 9 of Cups compared to the Radiant Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And here's the original 8 of Pentacles compared to the Radiant Rider-Waite-Smith deck. However, I fully understand if you just can't relate to the Rider-Waite-Smith deck at all. First of all, they are all white people. Secondly, they are all traditional roles. The Empress is the Earth Mother, and the Emperor is the ruler. The King is in charge, and the Queen is subservient. Thirdly, most people are wearing tunics and robes, which is not the way most of us dress these days. And finally, you may not be able to relate to people sitting on thrones, living in castles, or riding on horses. Also, you may be a person of color, a member of the LGBTQ community, or just more modern and not seeing yourself in the cards. So here are some examples of decks that you might find easier. I've chosen 4 cards from the Radiant Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and we'll compare them to the other 4 decks. Here's the Awakened Tarot, created by Sally Wilms. Take a look at the Fool, Hermit, Page of Cups, and Queen of Pentacles. I'm going to go through these quickly so you can pause if you need to. Here's the This Might Hurt Tarot deck by Isabella Rotman. Take a look at the High Priestess, Chariot, Ten of Wands, and King of Cups. Here's Llewellyn's Classic Tarot by Barbara Moore. Take a look at the Magician, Ace of Cups, Five of Pentacles, and Nine of Swords. Finally, here's the Light Seers Tarot by Chris Ann. Take a look at the Empress, Emperor, Six of Cups, and Four of Pentacles. There are a couple of original decks that I don't recommend using. My first teacher was a purist and loved these decks because they were copies of the original ones. I found them immensely frustrating and don't recommend them for beginners. The first is the Tarot of Versailles. The images of the major arcana aren't terrible. They're a little dated in my opinion, but here you can see Strength, the Hanged Man, Temperance, and the Sun compared to the Radiant Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I could figure those out. Here are the ones I had trouble with. I've put the corresponding Rider-Waite-Smith cards underneath. The Four of Wands, the Six of Pentacles, the Eight of Swords, and the Ten of Cups. You may be smarter than me, but I found these incredibly frustrating. The other deck that I found pretty much unusable is the Visconti de Madrone Tarot. First of all, this deck is huge. It is beautiful in that the cards are shiny, but nothing is labeled. The cards all look the same to me. All right, hopefully that's enough glare off that you can see. I'm holding up coins and swords. I seriously have no idea what these other 2 cards are. Also, look at their size compared to the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. They are absolutely huge, and you cannot use them to shuffle. The fourth thing to consider is cost. The Rider-Waite-Smith deck is about $20 on Amazon. Many decks start at about $12, and prices increase from there. Basic decks are usually in the $20 to $40 range. Limited edition decks can start with $80 to $500 and more, and out-of-print decks can literally go for thousands. So your budget may determine which kind of deck you want to use. Another thing to consider is the size. So you might think that all tarot decks are the same size as playing cards, which are 2.5 by 3.5 inches. They are not. So here's the Rider-Waite-Smith deck that I've been using, and it's pretty much a standard size and very manageable to work with. If you're actually using the cards to study, I would recommend getting a bigger deck. I have a Rider-Waite-Smith deck that's 4 inches by 6.5 inches. I love this deck because I can actually see what's on the pictures. And here's what it looks like compared to the size of a regular deck. This is the Visconti de Madrone Tarot deck, which is 7.5 by 3.5 inches. It's beautiful to look at, but it's not usable if you want to shuffle. Here it is compared to the size of a regular tarot deck. There's also a mini purse deck that is 1 3/4 by 2.875 inches. Personally, I find this too small to work with, but I can see the value of having it to stick it in your purse at some point. So number 6 is paper quality. This makes a huge difference. You don't want poor quality paper, and you don't want cards that don't shuffle well and stick together. The seventh thing to consider is the quality of the guidebook. Most decks come with some version of the little white book that is about the same size as the cards. Here's one from the Halloween Tarot by Karen Lee that is pretty typical. They generally don't have pictures, and there's just a sentence or two about each card. Some are a little bit thicker and look more like books. So this is an example from the Cozy Witch Tarot deck by Amanda Lovelace, and you can see what it looks like inside. And some come with really gorgeous guidebooks. Here's one from the Radiant Tarot. I love this guidebook. It's really pretty. It gives a synopsis of each card, then keywords, then how to use it in various situations. And it talks about what to do when the card is upright and reversed. And there's a nice quote. As you can see by the post-it notes, I use this all the time. And the last thing I think you should consider is modesty. The Rider-Waite-Smith decks are very clean, if that's the right word. You see the Lover's card, and the man obviously has a penis, but it's just a squiggly line. And I think that is the most R-rated card in the deck. I just wanted to mention this because you might not be comfortable with the more graphic card. Here are 3 examples, and I've put the Radiant Rider-Waite card above it. So here is the Lover's card from the Llewellyn's Classic Tarot. Here is the Devil card from the Llewellyn's Classic Tarot. And here is the Hanged Man from the Druid deck. So I hope you found that helpful. Here's a summary of my 8 steps to choosing a tarot deck. Number 1, make sure it's a tarot deck and not an oracle deck. Number 2, select a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Number 3, choose images you can relate to. Number 4, consider the cost. Number 5, consider the size. Large for studying, medium for easy shuffling, and small if you want to throw it in your purse. Number 6, consider the paper quality. Number 7, look at the quality of the guidebook. And number 8, think about modesty. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.